Hey, Denver, it's Paul. It's been a couple of weeks now since Congresswoman Lauren Boebert decisively won the Republican primary for Congressional District 4. And I think that was a shock to a lot of people around the country who hadn't heard from her since Beetlejuice, or maybe since she decided to leave her whole district and run to represent our Eastern Plains. But it was not a shock to listeners of this special limited run series. If you haven't heard the first 5 episodes, you can catch them all right now on this feed. Just scroll back a few weeks, or on our website, denver.citycast.fm. But right now, it's time for the finale. Please enjoy our interview with the Congresswoman herself.
About a month and a half ago, my producer Paul Caroli and I drove to the small town of Windsor in northern Colorado for a big interview.
Will you tell me what you had for breakfast this morning?
I do not eat breakfast. Breakfast slows me down.
It was 8 o'clock on a Monday night at Congresswoman Lauren Boebert's new house, which was still full of boxes from her recent move to this new congressional district. She had been cooking dinner for her boys, and the smell of beef stroganoff was wafting through the house. It was a very awkward sound check. Paul and I don't normally do interviews with politicians on short notice in their homes.
So I drank black coffee like I do every single morning. I learned to just enjoy really crappy black coffee because I'm on the road all the time, and you don't have time for sweet creamers.
And you can get shitty coffee anywhere.
Anywhere.
Yeah. She offered us a couple of black raspberry LaCroix. Her mom was in the next room, and nervous energy was filling the kitchen.
I like a 7-Eleven coffee every now and again.
Their flavored coffees are good.
Yeah.
Depends on when it was made, too.
That's
fresh.
For sure.
United Airlines is my coffee go-to.
Oh, yeah?
She didn't know what we were about to ask her. We didn't know what she was about to say.
I think we're ready.
Okay. 6 months ago, we set out to understand the person who became the infamous Congresswoman. We interviewed dozens of her former friends and rivals, journalists who've covered her rise to power, and real people affected by her hard-right policy ideas. We drove all the way to Rifle, where she grew up and ran a restaurant. We reviewed her record in Congress, the antics and the actual votes. We dissected all her lies about the Beetlejuice scandal. And then, all of a sudden, we were sitting down at her kitchen table. And finally, she was just a person. A mom in jeans and a t-shirt, heels and a black baseball cap, cooking dinner for her family and thinking about her next campaign event. This is Lauren Boebert Can't Lose, Episode 6. Spin and talking points and awkwardness and missed opportunities. But this is what it's like to try to have a real conversation with Congresswoman Lauren Boebert. Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Bree. Paul, it's great to have you here.
Thanks for having us.
And thanks for having me on your podcast here. I'm looking forward to it.
So, Congresswoman, I noticed on Saturday when we talked that you were not wearing your signature item, your gun on your thigh. Have you stopped wearing it?
I just wear it in different places now, carry it in different places. So in Washington, D.C., I have become more accustomed to concealed carry. And a lot of times just on the road, it's in the car, in my purse, something like that. But in Washington, D.C., I had to be creative with concealed carry. And so that's kind of, I guess, what I've been doing more of. It's not for any kind of statement or because of anything else anyone thinks. But also, I mean, in most places in the 4th district, there are plenty of people who have my 6 at these events.
How do you feel about that, not having it on you as often for so many years? It was your thing.
Well, I'm not unarmed. It would be a shame for you to think that I'm unarmed.
Okay.
But,
Thank you.
Just sometimes it's cumbersome. And I still have my tactical rig where I have my Glock on my thigh. But, it's just not as every day. When I was in my restaurant, I mean, that was how I carried because that's how I could carry it more conveniently. I even switched from my Smith & Wesson. I always want to say Swiss & Wesson because we had a burger called Swiss & Wesson. So it sounds like I either don't know what I'm talking about or I have a lisp, but I had my Smith & Wesson and it would get dirty and then I would take it to the range and there'd be like onion crumbs or sauce or something that had spilled in it, and it would jam up. And so I switched over to my Glock because a Glock is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah, it's going to shoot.
But it's like a part of your identity. I think it's part of the thing that symbolizes who you are. People identify you with that. Do you think that changes the way, when you walk into a room, your presentation at all?
Absolutely not. I promise you, walk down any street with me in an airport, in a grocery store, at a gas station, and I am still recognizable without the Glock on my hip. But people do not question where I stand on the Second Amendment.
I just think about, too, here we're in Windsor, Colorado. It's definitely more common. We were at an event of yours that felt like something that was more just every day for folks. Washington is not like that at all. How was that reaction, or how did you feel when you walked in for the first time into a room in Washington, D.C., where you're maybe the only person who's, I guess maybe not visibly has a gun, but it's part of your everyday?
The only person who really was upset at me voicing that I would carry my firearm in Washington, D.C. was Nancy Pelosi. She called me the enemy within. She put up metal detectors outside the House chambers. And actually, there are a lot of Democrats, even in Washington, D.C., that have their D.C. concealed carry permits and carry. The instructor that I go to, he trains Democrats all the time, gets them licensed, and makes sure that they are able to carry their firearms. But there are many more there than you would think, both legal and illegal.
One thing we haven't talked about in this series at all is the issue of democracy itself, which is unfortunately a hot topic these days. So when I heard her mention Nancy Pelosi a second ago and allude to violence at the Capitol, all I could think about was January 6th. And you should know, of all 6 candidates running for the Republican nomination for Colorado's Congressional District 4, Lauren Boebert is the only one who still thinks that the 2020 election was stolen from Donald Trump. I have to ask you, though, about you mentioned Nancy Pelosi. You said she called you the enemy within.
Yes.
That just reminded me. One of the questions I was thinking about asking you tonight was about January 6th.
Oh, great. Praise the Lord.
You put out some tweets that day that seemed to indicate some movements of
those didn't
Nancy
age well.
Pelosi. No, I wouldn't say so.
No, but no one knew what was happening. I'm in the House chambers, and all of a sudden, Nancy Pelosi is swept away. And there is an interim speaker that is in the chair suddenly. And I recognized when one of my colleagues was speaking, and he said, "Madam Speaker," as he's speaking, and he goes, "Excuse me, Mr. Speaker." And it caught my attention, and I looked up and I saw frenzy all around the dais where she was. And I started looking around and thinking, what is happening? And so, yes, I tweeted out that the speaker was just removed from the chambers. The doors were not shut yet. There were no announcements made of what was happening. No one knew. And then soon thereafter, the doors shut in. We have Capitol Police that are beginning to yell instructions. And honestly, after the 2020 Summer of Love, all I could think of is Antifa. And I did not know what was happening. We heard doors rattling. They were escorting members out. And honestly, I was unarmed that day. I was disarmed, not unarmed, because Nancy Pelosi had just did all these radical things and came after me. And I said, I'll follow the rules. I'm not going to, she didn't put up the metal detectors yet, but made statements. And I said, I'll follow the rules. I won't have my firearm in the chambers. And I sat there and I thought, wow, I may need my firearm today and I don't have it. And I was pretty pissed off about that. But I ended up leaving the chambers with the rest of the members. Some members who were armed stayed behind and helped Capitol Police, and Capitol Police were grateful for that. But we did not know what was about to take place.
So just to clarify totally, you weren't sending any signals. You weren't trying to tell anybody outside the building where she was moving.
What was really happening.
No, absolutely no. And in fact, there were Democrats who broke out of the committee room that we were all brought to do news interviews and then say what committee room we were all being held in. And everyone completely ignored that. But because I sent a tweet, that's public enemy number one. I had my children in the chambers, in the Capitol just a couple of days before. My husband, my boys, my mom. We had a Capitol Police officer touring us around the Capitol, my new place of work. And then you have Representative Cohen say, oh, well, Lauren Boebert had a large group in here just last night. It was actually 3 nights prior. She must be leading a reconnaissance tour. And, I am fine with self-deprecating humor. I grew up with 4 brothers. I have 4 boys. My husband was a roughneck. And, we all poke fun at each other. So I just started to own it, and make reconnaissance tour jokes because it was so far from the truth.
Let's talk about your current race a little bit, because this is a very interesting race. We're 6 weeks out right now.
Honestly, when we first started campaigning here in this district, we started getting 72,000 requests for debates and forums. And I thought, dear Lord, how many of these do we have to do? I've gone to our Lincoln Day dinners and different GOP events and community events. And usually there's one big debate and a primary. And that's what I've experienced. But also it's been head to head with another opponent for the most part. And this one, we started with a very crowded field. I think at one point there were 12 running for this seat. And so started accepting them. I believe in showing up and being present, whether I agree with, what the event's stipulations are. And so I started going to these forums and debates, and I learned very quickly that I love it. I absolutely love it. And I try not to say the exact same thing every time. See, now the problem is, the good thing is I'm unscripted, but the problem is I'm unscripted.
What would you do if you lost?
I don't have a defeat mentality, and so that's not something that I think of. But there's always something to do.
You never daydreamed about like a TV gig or like I don't know.
No, I've not daydreamed about a TV gig in the least. No.
Okay.
Want to know one of my favorite sounds? Here it is. That's the sound I hear when I'm learning Spanish with Babbel. And if you want to learn a new language this year, I guarantee it'll be one of your favorite sounds too. I'm David Plotz. I'm the CEO of CityCast, and I've been doing Babbel for a few weeks, and it's been so much fun. This week, I've been learning lots of food vocabulary and how to order in a restaurant. This is one of the things I love about Babbel, is that it's about learning the language so that you can use it. As Babbel says, it's designed by real people for real conversation. So it's all based on real life situations. And these restaurant lessons are awesome. When I went to Mexico City last year with my girlfriend, I was mute. I was a mute. But next time, I'm going to be ordering the sopes and las salsas picantes. Babbel has over 16 million subscriptions sold, plus all of Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by their 20-day money-back guarantee. Here's a special limited-time deal for CityCast listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for CityCast listeners at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast. Spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
This episode is brought to you by Fox Restaurant Concepts. Because Blanco Cocina and Cantina is serving up Sonoran-style Mexican food, margaritas, and good times daily at 9th and Colorado. But Blanco is more than your typical Mexican restaurant. It's an escape from the ordinary, a happy hour hangout, a place to sit back, recharge, and party. Blanco opens at 11 a.m. every day, but the happy hour is where it's at. Hit up Blanco between 2 and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday and all day Tuesday for killer deals, including their all-new summer special. That's a whole pitcher of classic margaritas and a plate of nachos con queso blanco for just $25. You can dine in or take out for lunch, dinner, and weekend brunch. I mean, I'm all about the ambiance in this place. It does look like a vacation. View the menu, make reservations, and order online at BlancoCocinaCantina.com. That's BlancoCocinaCantina.com. This episode is brought to you by Denver Botanic Gardens Chatfield Farms. Because it's time for the garden's annual Lavender Festival. Coming up on the weekend of July 20th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Saturday and Sunday, you can immerse yourself in more than 2,000 lavender plants at Chatfield Farms Lavender Garden. It's a family-friendly celebration of all things lavender, with live music, local artisans and lavender products, and demos in the blacksmith shop and dye garden. I mean, I bet you could get lavender soaps, lavender lotions, lavender candles. Fresh lavender candles, you can't beat that. Like a fresh made one. I'm also curious about what they do in the dye garden. That sounds awesome. And if you've never been to the Botanic Gardens at Chatfield Farms, you've got to go. It's right off C470 and Wadsworth Boulevard in Littleton. They'll have plenty of food and drink vendors, as well as barrel train rides, lawn games, and crafts for the kids. Tickets must be purchased in advance at botanicgardens.org. That's botanicgardens.org to purchase your tickets for the Lavender Festival today.
So this is the first time you've been running for office in this new district here on the Eastern Plains. We've been talking about this in different ways. Your old district, you were very strongly associated with because of this restaurant, Shooters that you mentioned.
You grew up there. Your family was there.
Yeah, your family, your friends. What is it like leaving them behind and like running to represent a place that's not your community?
Well, so I was raised in Aurora and I lived in Montbello as well. And so I moved to Rifle as a young teenager and I've been there for 25 years. And so, yes, I've spent a significant part of my life, but also friends and family here in Eastern Colorado, come to Eastern Colorado often. I've campaigned all throughout the 4th District and beyond. I've campaigned throughout the entire state, even spent time in Denver campaigning and, at our capital.
I must have missed you. I've never seen a Lauren Boebert campaign event in Denver. You got to invite me next time you come in.
Those are the ones you got to pay money for, see?
Interesting. That is interesting.
No, not all of them. But with all of this, even before I considered running for office, what really got me kick-started wasn't even Beto O'Rourke. That was a big thing in Colorado and in my life, when I confronted him and, said, hell no, you're not going to take our guns after he said, hell yes, we're taking them. And I didn't expect that to be a big deal. But, the right Twitter account got a hold of it and it ended up going viral. But before any of that, the National Popular Vote Compact was signed into law. And I just overheard customers talking about that in my restaurant. And I said, whoa, hold the phone. Like, I'm pretty politically ignorant and even with government, but this, I understand national popular vote and you got to tell me what just happened.
What had just happened was that Colorado's Governor Jared Polis had signed a bill on March 15th, 2019, to lend Colorado's support to a potential reform in the way America elects its presidents. Specifically, it would pledge Colorado's electoral college votes to whichever candidate wins the national popular vote. But it would only happen after enough other states enact similar reforms to sway an election. That's why this project is called the National Popular Vote Compact. At the time, 11 other states had codified similar pledges. Today, the total stands at 17.
They walked through the legislation and I said, what do we do? How do we stop this? Well, I've heard there's a petition going around and I tracked down who was circulating the petitions and I said, I want to carry these in my restaurant. And so I started collecting signatures and I ended up traveling throughout Colorado to get signatures, not for myself, not to be somebody, not, for attention, but to try to save our votes. And because I believe in the Electoral College and I think that that's a really great system. In fact, I would love to have an Electoral College voting system statewide. For Colorado in particular, for statewide races. I think that would empower some of our rural communities. And anyway, I ended up being the second largest signature gatherer in the state for that issue. And we got it on the ballot. It failed. But, I was like, I think, I feel like I just did something. I did something I believe in. And so, even then I was fighting for all of Colorado, not just Rifle. And folks can say, okay, well, you're here in Windsor. You don't know anything about us. Well, you could say that about anywhere. You could say that about the 3rd District. I lived in Rifle for 25 years. There wasn't more than a 70-mile radius that I really traveled to living in Rifle, Colorado. I went to Garfield County and Mesa County. I didn't veer out of that much in my day-to-day life. And so I had to learn about Durango. I had to learn about the issues in Cortez. And so you can say that about anywhere. And also my opponents who I'm running, I think all of us have asked for someone's vote in an area that they haven't spent their whole life living in. You know, we have candidates who have run for statewide office.
But I could see where someone would say, well, but this is just strategy, Lauren. Like you were up against someone this last election in CD3 who you won by under 600 votes. This guy Adam Frisch was fundraising off of you, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
So I could see someone saying, well, you just jumped to something that seems strategically like an easier race. What would you say to that?
I would disagree that is my number one strategy and movement behind this. I mean, look, and when my husband and I discussed a divorce, he talked about moving out of the state, and he said, you know, I can't be you're everywhere. And if we're not going to be together, I can't be there. And I thought that we could live close together and it not be an issue. And when I left the house with him and all of this, I said, I want to make this as easy on you as possible. I'm not trying to hurt you. And was still living close. I mean, publicly, unfortunately, it was revealed that isn't going to work. And so this is what I did to take action to bring that separation. Now, of course, I looked at my race and that. And, you know, with Adam Frisch and that prior election, we had 50,000 Republicans not vote. There wasn't a lot of enthusiasm for Republican races. Everywhere that I went, I was hearing a lot of apathetic voters of, yeah, you got this. Don't worry about it. Well, they probably didn't vote. And then I was hearing folks saying, 2020 election was rigged. It was stolen. What's the point? And yeah, Adam Frisch was raising a lot of money off my name. I wish I could raise that much money off my name. But that money stopped. It dried up. And hopefully we can keep that seat in Republican hands. I believe a generic Republican can win that seat because it will have to be on policy, not personality. And the personal attacks will no longer be there. Adam Frisch was never gaining momentum on policy. And in any area that he was, it was because he was talking like a Republican, because it is a conservative district.
I think I have to disagree with you about that. I think he was gaining momentum on some policy because I've talked to
the Republican policy that he was saying that he was for, but wasn't for when he was an Aspen city councilman for 10 years and voted to raise taxes and voted for carbon taxes and raising budgets. And
I'm not talking about those policies. I'm talking about the PACT Act. And I'm talking about veterans in Pueblo. I've talked to a handful of veterans in Pueblo, and you've been attacked with this exact angle, but it seems like you do have a voting record. There's this one bill, the PACT Act, which would have expanded health benefits for veterans. Pueblo is very proud of their veterans.
As am I.
And they were very upset with you about that vote. And I think there were a lot of people excited.
They were told to be upset about me. And Adam Frisch, that was an attack that he had, absolutely. But in this, it started with the omnibus bills that Nancy Pelosi would shove great veteran bills in, and I would vote against, or the National Defense Authorization Act that had vaccine mandates for our military personnel, or taxpayer-funded travel for abortions, or things like that. And, you know, votes against these things, they are able to cherry pick and say, oh my goodness, Lauren Boebert doesn't like this group of people. She doesn't like this policy. She voted against the whole darn thing. Absolutely not. And if there's anyone who stands with veterans, it is me. I have been on bases. I've been in the VFWs, and I've been in and talked with these folks and grew up honoring those who have served our country. The PACT Act, it was crap. I mean, the ultimate position behind it is fantastic. Absolutely. We need to help these veterans who have suffered from Agent Orange and all of these things. But I mean, this is a forever endowment. This is money that is forever going to be there, and money that we do not have. There was no significant timeframes or caps put on this. And I mean, I've talked to veterans who are having such a hard time even getting the benefits from the PACT Act because it was not put together well at all. I would have loved to have been in the negotiating room to make that legislation better, but we were in the minority and there was no such thing. And so, you know, for our veterans, I've been honored to have two veterans who've received their Purple Hearts under my representation, one whom waited over 50 years to receive his Purple Heart. And then another one, we had Will Montgomery, He tried with 2 different congressmen in Colorado's 3rd district, more than 10 years. He tried to get the Purple Heart that he deserved and was denied. And when I saw these denials, I said, I'm getting you your Purple Heart. And within months, I had it for him. And, he's out there quoted saying, no one else could get this for me. No one else would get this for me. But Lauren Boebert stepped up and got me my Purple Heart.
For the record, President Biden announced in May that more than 1 million claims have now been granted to veterans under the PACT Act since he signed it back in 2022. What surprised me about this answer from her, though, wasn't defending her vote, but that she chose to reiterate her criticism of multi-subject legislation when she herself used that technique to pass the Pueblo Jobs Act. We talked about that back in episode 2, and it's still the only bill she's ever solo sponsored that's been passed into law.
But I stand by, the process of the voting. If it's an omnibus bill or where there's all these other things that are attached to it, I'm not going to stand for that. That's why I fought against Kevin McCarthy in January of 2020 to change the House rules. I didn't want omnibus bills. I wanted individual appropriations bills, and I wanted single subject legislation. So you can't have something that is saying, this is the American Rescue Plan. So this is our COVID-19 bailout, our 6th shot at the tranche of trillions of dollars, and only have 9% of it go to actual anything COVID health related. Like that was $1.9 trillion, and 9% of the COVID health relief package was geared towards COVID. And so I said, I want single subject legislation. So these attack ads won't come. They can't come because you're either voting on the merit of the issue or, against the entire horrible package.
So if you did so well by veterans in Pueblo, I wonder why you didn't move there. It would have been in your district. It would have been even closer, I think.
It's warmer in Pueblo. Yeah. So, I moved up north, but Pueblo is beautiful, and I have a lot of great people down there. But still, like for instance, I have my mom here in town, and I was talking to her. She lives in Montrose, and she's like, "Oh, has this ad come out? Did you have your ad with President Trump endorsing you? Do you have that on the TV?" And I was like, "Yeah, Mom, it's been up." And she was like, "Why haven't I seen it?" So, well, because you're not in my district. We're targeting the 4th district with ad buys, not the 3rd. And so that's another big part of it. So, I mean, being right there with my ex-husband, my family, my kids in school, all of this stuff where there was so much tension, it's kind of quieted down in the 3rd district when it comes to Congresswoman Lauren Boebert because we're over here now.
I don't know about Paul, but by this point, I was feeling like a washing machine stuck on spin. We showed up at her home hoping to talk about how she's grown as a person or learned how Congress works, but all we were getting was the latest campaign talking points. I genuinely wanted to understand her and how she thinks, and I wasn't getting it until this exchange at the end when things finally got a little bit real. I have one last question.
Sure.
I have to say, I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity. I'm sitting at a table with you face to face. Someone in my life who I love very much is going through a gender transition as we speak. And the LGBTQ community is my community.
Mm-hmm.
This is the family that raised me. And I wonder, you've said some really hateful things about people like me and my family and my, the person close to me who's transitioning. Where does that come from for you?
So it's not necessarily anything hateful towards a person individually. We are the party of inclusion and we welcome people. I mean, we have the log cabin Republicans and, there are folks who are absolutely my friend. And my mom was a hairstylist and I grew up around, back then it was just the gay and lesbian community back in the 80s and 90s. And, that's all we knew. All my mom's best friends were gay and my mom was even with a woman for 10 years. So, it's not that there's anything personal against who someone chooses to be. I mean, I think everyone here at the table knows that I have been heavily criticized for being with someone that people didn't think that I should be with, right? And so it's not about that. It's about the attack on our children. That is where I draw the line. It is our children. An adult can do it. Listen, girl, I've had some work done to my body. I'm not against that, okay? But I'm a grown-up. right? My mom didn't take me in when I was 12 years old and say, what can we put her under the knife for? And so that is where I draw the line, is when you start confusing children. I wanted to be a mermaid when I was a little girl. My mom didn't have me live in a pool, and I mean, I tried, but I mean, that right there is just this ideological attack on our children who are at such a vulnerable stage in life already. I mean, puberty is hell. It is horrible. And then on top of that, to inject our children with hormones and all of these other things and make them even more crazy. I mean, there are many stories of those who are detransitioning and saying, why did anyone allow me to do this as a child? Why was I allowed to make this decision? It's not everyone, but it happens, right? And so
many stories?
Absolutely.
I think we had a reporter on Heidi Beadle who's trans, and she said she quoted a statistic that more folks have seen a ghost than they know a trans person. So it's hard it's hard for me to hear this thinking and knowing that it's just such a small percentage of our population.
You're correct. It is such a small percentage, but look, that has been the complete focus of our entire nation. And
I don't think so. I think this is mostly from people on the right that are making this such a focus. I don't hear people on the left worrying about this very much.
They're the ones who are pushing this on our children, and that's why you hear the uprising from the right, because we want our children protected. Listen, I would be so tickled and thrilled if we just got rid of the federal Department of Education, got rid of education at a state level, and had it be community-based, and have your school boards and your districts run your schools and have your curriculum that way, because that would take a lot of this national focus off, because the moms and dads would be showing up and they would know exactly what's going on in their children's school, and they would address it right there, instead of having all of these federal nexus and strings tied to things, and or even at a state level, like with the comprehensive sex ed. Oh, well, you can't get this funding if you're not teaching this particular topic here in your school. And so if you guys don't want it to be a focus, okay, fine. Then don't let it be a focus and leave the kids alone. Let adults do what adults want to do, and so be it.
I feel like that's the same exact argument on the other side, though. It's like, if the kids want to,
they are children. They're not getting tattoos. They're not. I mean, you're not going to undergo a child for cosmetic surgery, but it's okay to mutilate their bodies and cut off their breasts and their genitalia. I mean, this is.
Sure.
It's just.
Why not? It's different culture. No.
This is where I disagree with you with. But I'm glad that you guys are actually pushing back. Finally, you've been very polite. But I'm going to absolutely disagree with mutilating children's bodies.
I guess I don't know anybody that's done that. Children, I guess I have a lot of trans friends, and like I said, the LGBTQ community is my community.
I would love to provide you some information. Yes.
Yeah, I just don't. This is just a foreign concept to me.
So, okay, I have Democrat friends who do not see. I'm even friends with Democrats. I have Democrat friends who do not pay attention to the political world. They don't watch the news. They don't care, whatever. Okay. When they start to hear about, well, why? They ask me questions, why not? Well, I just don't want it done to children. Well, yeah, it's not. And I don't either. And then the stories come up and I provide the information. It's like, why would anybody do this? You have Bill Maher. Have you heard any of his segments on this? Bill Maher, who hates President Trump, who is a self-proclaimed liberal, is like, guys, you have taken it too far. If you want President Trump to get reelected, then keep doing this, because you are driving people away from the Democrat Party with your extremism. When you have Bill Maher, who he has said, why am I the one defending children? I don't even like kids. Bill Maher has said this on his show. And he's like, you guys are forcing me to defend children. He's like, you bashed Ron DeSantis for what he was saying about Disney. Well, look what came out with Nickelodeon. And he's like, so are you telling me that there's really zero connection and there was nothing like that happening there?
That's the story of a cis straight man, I believe, if we're talking about Dan Schneider. If we want to talk about abusive children, I think statistically we can look and see that this is cisgendered straight men are the biggest perpetrators of abuse, not trans.
I would say
people.
It's still a part of the grooming of children and the sexualization of children. all of this is the sexualization of children. And it's under that umbrella. When you are teaching a child how to masturbate, you don't think there's a problem there?
I don't personally know, but I think we see very differently on comprehensive sex ed for sure.
Right. Okay. Well, I certainly can talk more with you about that at another point, but I wish your friend all the best and clarity and, just wellness and soundness of mind. But yeah, there's certainly a lot of things that are going on in the world that, again, are shouldn't be the daily focus and daily distraction. But all of it somehow gets wrapped into that. And part of it is messaging. I feel like Democrats win on messaging because, they win on policy because they win on messaging, even if the policy is wrong. And, there's a lot that we need to work on when our nation is $35 trillion in debt, that we continue to borrow money from China on a regular basis, $100 billion at a time with the deficit spending, the wide open southern borders, and, losing up to 300 people a day from fentanyl poisoning. All of these things, we need to get energy independent and energy dominant to lower inflation. All of these things are issues that are kitchen table issues.
Well, and that's where I would push back too, because if we're talking about spending time and money and energy on all of these things, the Pew Research Center says 5% of young adults in the U.S. identify as trans. 5%.
Yeah, it's a low.
So why are we talking about it?
Because it's continuing to be pushed on our children, and I don't want our children to be messed up, psychologically. None of us do, right? We have more mental health awareness than ever before, and we have more of a mental health crisis than ever before. You can't just throw money at a problem and it go away. There has to be something that's wrong here. And 5% is that's actually a larger number than I thought that it was. And what is this? What is that considered? Is that someone who's actually transitioned surgically? Is that someone who's just done the hormones, or is that someone who just dresses different?
Sure.
I mean, what is that?
Spectrum. That's a great question. I'm just the point I'm trying to make is I think most trans folks know there's just not that many of them out there. So it takes up so much air of the conversation. When, like you said, even your constituents want you to work on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Inflation and the border and all these other issues, but we're still talking about it.
Well, this is an issue that needs to be addressed at some point, because when you have people's children who are impacted, when you have young girls who are having to play against boys in sports, and young athletic girls who have practiced their whole lives in their sport, and then they get to where they want to be, and there's a mediocre male athlete who decides, I'm a girl today, and has been losing all of these races and coming in 200th place, and now he's beating all the women. I mean, that's an issue, right? So at some point you have to take action and say, well, where do we draw the line here? Where does Title IX come in, and how do you protect women? I'm asking, where are the feminists? Why are men now suddenly allowed to put on lipstick and say, I'm a girl and I can do everything better than you? Where are the feminists? I want to stand with you in agreement and solidarity and say, damn it, we are women, hear us roar. No, you cannot bleed. You cannot menstruate. You cannot birth a child. You cannot breastfeed a child. I am not a birthing person. I am a mother who has given life from the womb, from womb to earth. I've been here, room and board, right? And now a man is going to come in and say that he can be me better than me. No, I at some point we need to be rapture ready and just get right with Jesus, because it's going too far.
Can I ask you just really quick, do you not identify as a feminist? Because you just sort of talked about them as a
Maybe
as
I
a
am.
group. Okay.
I might be. Okay. I don't know.
Separate from you.
Maybe I need to look into it more. But I mean, where is our stand? I'm not a feminist to the point of saying I demand everything that a man could do, and I want to do, no, I don't want to go and swing a hammer. If you do, more power to you. Like my mother-in-law, she was amazing, and she would get in there with the men, and
you're doing a job right now that women couldn't do for a long time,
they
which
couldn't.
is legislative.
And here we are, and God bless America, right?
Yeah,
it's amazing. But in all of this, yes, a woman can go and achieve so many things, but there are physical differences. And, my mother-in-law, we thought she was going to be the one that had a girlfriend for 10 years, but it was my feminine mom. So,
well, I think we could leave it at that. I think you and I will agree to disagree on some of this stuff, but this has been really...
I think we agree on more than you think. You know, like I said, I've had conversations with Jamie Raskin, and you know, both of us are just like, oh wow, yeah, you're a person. Like, yeah. I think the human side of this job is taken away all the time. And people forget that we're all people and we're all trying to live life. And we want the best for our families. We want the best for our neighbors and our communities. And, you know, my reach is just a little farther than others in my position and how I want to help people. But delivering for them is why I got into this. And, you know, I don't love the personality and profile pieces because I didn't come here to have personal attention. But I guess at times, you know, I need to still stand up and speak up for myself and give voice to what's out there. But at the end of the day, I'm here to legislate and be an effective policymaker and hopefully save our country.
Well, Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, I hope we get a chance to sit down again at some point. But for tonight, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much, Paul. Thanks, Bree.
Listening back to this interview, it's frustrating to hear all the opportunities we missed to call out her half-truths. But after going through this long journey into the mind of a MAGA warrior, we weren't there for a fight. Somehow, I think we expected, even hoped, to meet Lauren Boebert the person. And maybe we did. And maybe she found enough voters in her new district to send her back to Washington, where she'll play a role in shaping the future of our democracy, even if the future she wants doesn't include democracy at all. I'd love to talk to her about that again, and she knows the invite is on the table anytime she wants. I'll let you know if she says yes. But in the meantime, we'll just be reading the headlines and watching her clips and feeling as strongly as ever like she really won't ever lose.
This has been Lauren Boebert Can't Lose, a production of CityCast Denver, where you can find me and Paul every day talking about the latest news and culture in Denver, Colorado. We'd also like to take a minute to thank everyone who helped out on this series, especially our other producers, Olivia Jewel Love and Alexandra McMahon, and the team at CityCast, including Will Fulton, Andy McDaniel, David Plotz, Andrea Salenzi, and Noah Snyderman. Thanks also to Joshua Emerson for production support, and Don Chicharron and Los Mocachetes for our fantastic music. You can learn more about us in this special series at denver.citycast.fm, and let us know what you think in a text or a voicemail at 720-500-5418. Thanks for listening.